This year, I'm taking my sacred text right from our own hymnal, from Singing Living Tradition. So all year I've been using songs or readings for sacred text. And today my selection is This Is My Song. Now in introducing this, you just heard the words about what this is about with our singers singing, but I also have a short video to show you as a reminder of what we witnessed a couple of years ago.
Is this every lesbian clergy member in America in one place?
Is it wild?
Fuck off, whore! Put on a pencil, kid! You're gonna take my picture home and masturbate. I bet you are. You will not replace us. You will not replace us. I got two followers. When you turn that corner, start stepping. Let's go.
Wow.
You will not replace us! Yeah! You won't replace us! Your ass gonna die, your friends ain't gonna say it! Cat lady!
Thank you for this opportunity to get to
Park down here now.
Look at this chick. Look at this chick.
That's what I was told. You know who Faith Bodie is? You know. Well, she probably had met her.
So this was right here in the United States of America. And I think most of us were, probably should not have been shocked, but I think most of us were, that this was actually taking place with nothing hidden, you know, just in the United States. So what is this with this nationalism, especially ethnic nationalism? And it's not just in the United States, not just in the United States. Greg and I, here we are in, he's not advertising for Stubbs Oil Company, I don't know. Maybe he is. We visited Poland a couple of years ago, and some of you followed me on Facebook. I was taking pictures of all the different places we've seen. If you remember, I took Flat Jesus with me. I took Flat Jesus and had Flat Jesus go with us to the different places, and actually Flat Jesus was kind of concerned because he was the only person of color that he's anywhere around. Also, he was the only Jewish person. They were all, although Poland used to have a large Jewish population, you know what happened with that. So we're watching this, and I'm thinking, I'm in this place, and I did not expect this. I don't know what I expected. I'm going to Europe. I expected some multicultural something, you know? And I'm thinking, what is this that everybody's white and Catholic, you know? What is this? And of course, Poland coming out of the Soviet bloc probably had a strong nationalistic attitude about their own nation. But what's happened in recent years has become something different than that. It's become similar to what we're seeing some things like here. This guy was elected he was the Law and Order Party, you know? They had one over there too, that kind of party. His name is Andrzej Duda. And he was like, let's close these borders, no more immigrants. And when Europe was trying to spread out the Syrian refugees, he was refusing to take them. No, he did not want to take his share after they said, here, you know, in the European Union, here's everybody's share. He didn't want them. He even went so far as to say that they needed to rewrite that Poland should have not be complicit in any way with the Holocaust, you know. So he's still in power, by the way. Our tour leader was very frustrated with him, and she was sharing it out loud. Of course, she was coming back to the United States. She's from Poland, coming back to the United States. But she was sharing her disgust with this guy. So we saw it there. Of course, you know, Brexit, we saw it there, and many other places. Now, some, indeed, we felt pretty good about some follow-up elections, maybe in France and other places where maybe they were able to not go in quite as far in that direction. But there tends to be, we see around the world, a rise of nationalism, So why now, you know? Why would this be happening now? Because the world is doing pretty well in terms of economies, those kinds of things. And usually when that happens, you have more liberalism. Now, this is the rule that failed, though, as described by this person this was in Psychology Today, but he does reference a lot of research and has footnotes, and you can go look this up by Dr. Barber. Here's the rule. As countries become more developed, there are measurable changes in social attitudes that move away from ethnocentrism in the direction of social tolerance and inclusiveness across a range of topics, from gay marriage and women's rights to humane treatment of prisoners. This is what you would expect as countries become, as he says, more developed. He says, painted in broad strokes, wealthier countries are more liberal, whereas poorer ones are more restrictive and less tolerant of diversity. The driver here is probably economics. We can draw this inference because when people are insecure, attitudes revert to being less liberal. Well, then how does this happen in a world where, as we talked about the last time I'm here, we actually are doing better in some ways and are more secure in some ways? He gives 4 reasons. The first is income inequality. So even though, you know, you might look at the overall economy, the income equality is great. This is a picture of a graph. This is just the United States, but you can see who has the money. That's the top 0.1%. So we have a period of increasing financial wealth, but the share of the income that is going to the lower half is just not rising like it does for the rest of it. This generates unhappiness and disillusionment, and it leads, of course, to addictions, depression, insecurity. And who are the scapegoats for this? The politicians use foreigners as the scapegoats. Who's taking your job? These people that are coming in is what is heard. So income inequality is part of the problem. He says the second thing is low social cohesion. Low social cohesion. And there are a couple of things he talks about that. Trust. We don't trust people now. Trust in other people is low in the U.S. compared to other developed countries. This phenomenon is associated with higher crime rates and ethnic hostilities. We don't trust people. People don't even trust the police, right? I mean, who do you trust? Do you trust the clergy now? No. I mean, except me. But I mean, you read, okay, it's not just in the Catholic Church. We saw what was happening in the Baptist Church. Who do you trust now? Do you trust your politicians? You know, who is it that we trust? So lack of trust. Also, social malaise arises from failures of government signified by collapsing infrastructure, declining school performance, soaring incarceration rates, stubbornly high poverty levels, and so on. Everyone feels, at least feels, vulnerable in such a climate, including our political leaders and financial elites, because they don't know where the stock market's going to go either, right? So they feel insecure, and that causes us to want to circle the wagons when you have that insecurity. And then mass media and the internet. And this we see happen again. Now that election time is coming up again, you're seeing a lot of memes and a lot of things coming forth again to divide people, we got all these people in the Democratic Party running, and so what do these things do? Then we don't know where they're coming from necessarily, but divide people, make people hate one person or another. And also to make us feel like the world is a dangerous place. The media, not only the internet does it, but the news, where it, if it bleeds, it leads, right? If it bleeds, it leads. So this does not help. And of course, it doesn't help that our mainstream politicians, our mainstream political leaders are sometimes now even aligning themselves with white supremacist groups and neo-Nazis. When they had the governor's race here in Georgia, the candidate that is now our governor says, here's my big truck, I'm going to use this to go round up all the illegals, and yeah, I said that, So, so this is what we have, making it all right to lift these kinds of things up, eliminating what had been decades of us having some diminishment of hate speech from politics. You couldn't do that, and now it's lifted up. Yeah, it must be okay to do. It comes from the top. And then the fourth thing is international politics. Who knows what the heck is going on with international politics? You don't know. You don't know. So there's a lot of insecurity. All this insecurity that we have over what's going on in our nation and the world leads to what Martin Luther King referred to as the false god of nationalism. Now, we don't hear all of King's speeches. We just hear that dream one over and over and over again, but he had some others that were very good. And this one was back in 1953 when he was a young man. So you may not know about this sermon. He had a series of sermons he did on false gods, and one of them was the false god of nationalism. I won't give his whole sermon, but I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from that sermon to you. Here's what Martin Luther King said back in 1953. Now, you remember we were very nationalistic then. You had the Cold War, etc. He says, our age is one in which men have turned away from the eternal God of the universe and decided to worship at the shrine at the God of nationalism. We are all familiar with the creed of this new religion. It affirms that each nation is an absolute sovereign unit, acknowledging no control save its own independent will. The watchword of this new religion is, my country, right or wrong. The preachers of this new religion are so convinced of its supremacy that they are determined to persecute anyone who does not accept its tenets. He goes on to say, will we continue to serve the false God that places absolute national sovereignty first, or will we serve the God in whom there is no east or west? Will we continue to serve the false God of imperialistic greed, or will we serve the God who makes love the key which unlocks the door of peace and security? Will we continue to serve the false God of racial prejudice, or will we serve the God who made of one blood all men to dwell upon the face of the earth? So King was preaching this, others were preaching this. Carter had a good speech related to some of this, and you began to see some people trying to make a shift to reaching out and being welcoming of the other people in the world, not having so much xenophobia or fear of foreigners. Even in corporations, do you remember this? I loved this. This was in 1971.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world to sing with me. Perfect harmony, perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a cloak and keep it company. And the real
like that, you know. It's a commercial. How many of you are old enough to remember the commercial? Okay, most of you in here, all right. I thought, okay, we're getting there. You know, even the corporate world is reaching out and putting people on a hilltop in Italy from all over the world and singing. And now, you know, we're not going to gather in Italy and drink Coke and sing, but we gather in here and sing, and we did sing about one world. We sang that a little earlier. Our world is one world. And indeed, it is a part of our religion. Our sixth principle, Unitarian Universalism, our sixth principle is that we affirm and support the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. So we lift that up. And if some people ask you, well, why is your position this way on immigration or something else, you can say, it's part of my religion, part of my faith, part of my religion. So we lift this up. But what can we do other than sing about it? Well, of course, you can get involved in politics and try to vote for people who will be good leaders. And I think most of us attempt to do that as well. But what can we do in our own little corner every day? I've been meeting with a group of folks here in the congregation, a White Allies group, and we've been trying to look just specifically at race, but we used a method to try to practice with of how we talk to other people that can be used really with anything. Can be used with when you're talking to people about immigration, or talking to people about incarceration, or anything where you may have big disagreements with them. How can you reach these people? Some of them are our own family members, of course, very often. Sometimes we have to talk to ourselves. Well, I'm going to share with you the methods, this method that we're using, that we've practiced, because I think it can be also used with just about anything where we're trying to communicate with other folks. And the first part is reflect. So it's like, don't just go into this without doing your preparation, doing your own homework, looking at yourself, looking at your own biases. You need to, because you're going to need to be sharing some of those stories probably. So do your own homework. Be ready to be in a listening mode, to not interrupt and share every minute what your idea is, but really to listen to see what they're saying and try to understand what they're saying. Reflect on your own experiences and what's brought you to journey to the position you are now as an ally. So the first part is reflecting. That's the R. Then as you are in these conversations with people, and they come up with what you think might be, gosh, you might want to say, how ridiculous or how stupid. But don't say that because you just that close the conversation, when they make the comment that they do about something because of their own xenophobia or homophobia or racism or whatever. Instead, ask more about it. Tell me more. Tell me an example of that. Try to find out why they are feeling the way they are feeling about that situation. And try to have an understanding. Try to have an understanding from their position at least, why they may feel the way they do. Okay? So ask these probing questions and listen. Actually listen. Not think about how am I going to counter it, but listen to what they're saying. And maybe reflect some of that back to them and share your understanding of what they're saying. Then this next part was hard for us. We had a hard time with this sometimes. That's connect. Find some way to connect your own experience and your own ideas with theirs. Try to find some truth in what they're saying or why they may feel what they're thinking about their own insecurities about a job, for instance. You can say, oh yes, when you're without a job, you really do feel insecure, and it's, at least understand that aspect and connect with that. What can you connect with? What can you share from your own background that's a little like that? Maybe from some of your own biases that you've had in the past, where you might have felt a certain way about a certain group of people. How can you connect with them, your own stories? And then the last part, that was our hard part. We wanted to go right to expanding and telling them this is how you're wrong. We wanted, no, let me give you our data, our statistics. Don't do that. That just shuts the door. So connect, then expand. It says, you can raise questions that open possibilities for a broader view. You know, is it possible that what you're saying is correct and this could be correct too? You know, is it possible, for instance, that there may be some immigrants that are coming that may have some criminal background, but the great majority of them do not, you know? So you might kind of give some expansion there. Offer your experiences that suggest a broader view. Encourage the skeptic to consider a broader view. Could it possibly be, you know, could this be a possibility? Highlight data, facts, then you bring in the facts. Then you can say, well, I read this article and here's some of the facts related to this, or here's some data that actually, for instance, it is, you know, the data is that immigrants have much lower criminality than the folks that are born here, you know. So you can bring that in later. You don't bring that up front, right? So this is what you do. You highlight the data and everything, and then maybe they don't agree with you still, but you've planted some seeds maybe. Maybe they don't want to say, oh yeah, I was wrong, but you might have planted a seed or two that might germinate later. Maybe not even in your presence. But if you've done it in a loving, caring way, it might. And you might even open up another possibility for another conversation. So we're practicing this, and I'm trying to practice it not only with things related to racism, but any of these isms and concerns I have and things I want to make a difference with, you know, as I share with other people. Because I'm one of these folks that probably needs to do more listening, needs to do more empathizing, more connecting. And yeah, I've got some information I've read I can tell you about, but maybe delay that a little bit. So I invite you all, as you are coming and sharing with people during this week, to think about this. And you just have to remember RACE, R-A-C-E. Let's say, what is the R? Reflect. The A is ask. The C is connect. And the E is expand. Oh, wow. And then you can come back and share with me how well you've done. And I'll come back and share with you. But of course, then also we need a little inspiration as we go forth and do that. So Robert's going to come back to the piano. He's going to give us an introduction. And we are all going to sing This Is My Song, which is our sacred text for today. May it be so.